Well, there are new questions now in the direction of a longtime U.S. ally in the Middle East, Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood, promising a new Egypt as he took the oath of office today. But the incoming president also making a very troubling pledge, vowing to work to free a terrorist imprisoned in the U.S. for a plot to blow up the New York City landmarks. The blind Sheikh, as he's known, also notorious for serving as the spiritual advisor to the terrorist convicted in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Joining me now is former State Department senior advisor Christian Whiton. He's also with D.C. International Advisory. Christian, always good to see you. Look, Abdel-Rahman is a convicted terrorist, to be sure, but this is the thing I don't think a lot of people realize. His fatwa was actually cited by Osama bin Laden as religious authority and justification for the 9/11 attacks. So when the new president of Egypt uses his very first speech to demand the blind Sheikh's release from a U.S. prison, I mean, Christian, can we assume that that is not a terribly good sign for new U.S.-Egyptian relations?
Right, Greg. It's an extremely bad sign to do this right off the gate, and it tells you two things about Morsi, the new president. First of all, he's either beholden to or in agreement with the most extreme and dangerous elements of Egyptian political life, the people who support terrorists and what they want to do to us. And second of all, it shows he's willing to insult the American people and to insult the American government. After all, the blind Sheikh, the terrorist, had a fair trial, duly imprisoned, and to come out of the gate and be willing to do that for something he will never get, and to something, if he did get this, if he got the release of the blind Sheikh, I mean, how would that help average Egyptians who are wondering where their next meal is coming from?
One would assume that the Americans would tell him to stuff it, and they may realize perhaps that, you know, he's doing this, Morsi is doing this to kind of throw a bone to the radical elements of the Egyptian populace, which invites the question, who's really in charge? I mean, the Egyptian military is the one that actually dissolved the parliament. The military seized the power of the parliament and then issued this new charter that, as I read it, deprives the president of much of its authority. So in truth, is the military still in charge? And if so, maybe that's better for the United States.
That's right. I think we're actually seeing some of the wisdom of the military in taking those decisions. Certainly, if the new president's first, at bat is going to bat for terrorists. The military in Egypt, as in other situations like this, you look at Turkey throughout the Cold War, where the military was a flywheel, was a moderating influence. Paradoxically, if you want accountable government in Egypt, if you want democracy in the long run, it's actually better to have a stronger role for the military now. Especially in these early days of Egyptian democracy, when the Islamists are better organized.
All right, so is it fair to say that Hosni Mubarak may be gone, but the regime has not changed? It's still there, and thus the people who are hailing this election as a transfer of power peacefully through democracy, they're probably mistaken. It's more of a charade?
I wouldn't call it a charade. I think it is real change. Mubarak is gone. His family is gone. There is this new political element. It's a different mix. The military isn't in quite the position it was.
Right.
So I don't think you could say it's quite the same. It's a new thing, and it's also one that's going to have a lot of turbulence.
But is the Muslim Brotherhood complicit in allowing the military to hold on to what may be the real reins of power, and they're basically acting, at least for now, as a puppet or figurehead?
There were some people who believed that the Muslim Brotherhood essentially made a deal, whether it was tacit or explicit, with the military, that they could have some power in order for the military not to crack down too hard on the Brotherhood or prevent them from assuming the presidency. But that also jives, frankly, with what we're seeing in Washington, where the Washington foreign policy establishment, including the Obama administration, has basically been blowing kisses at the Muslim Brotherhood, thinking it has come in from the cold.
Yeah, thinking they're moderate. Look, the Muslim Brotherhood does have a long and distinguished history of lies and deception, the most recent of which was, when Mubarak was ousted from power, the group said, well, we're not going to run a candidate for president, so don't worry about that. And, of course, they did. They ran Morsi. And they have an 84-year existence of adopting anti-American, anti-Israeli policies. Will that continue?
Yeah, I think it will. It's naive, I believe. You just have to ask, why would a group that has strived for this for so long, that has put up with Mubarak's prisons, why, unassuming power, would they change? You know, modern Islamism, the belief that you should unify mosque and state and have clerical rule, it actually didn't originate from Iran in 1979, and it didn't originate from Saudi Arabia or Al-Qaeda. It more or less came in the modern sense from Egypt, from the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, they've been saying some soothing things in English to the Western press, but if you look at what they really stand for, it's very scary, and we're seeing that with Morsi's first move here.
Christian Whiton, good to see you. Thank you very much.